Hey guys, Corey Scott here. And I want to talk about a question that I get all of the time. And here's the question: Mr. Scott, is it possible for the police to arrest me and my friend for the same marijuana or weed or gun? And is it possible for, not possible, but is it legal for a prosecutor to actually charge me and somebody else with the same illegal substance? I mean, how can they do that? So again, this is a very common question, and let me just answer this for you. And probably the best way to do this is to maybe, let's set up let's set up a story. Let's talk about how that would play out in real life. So let's just say that you and your buddy, you're in the car, you're driving, you're maybe going from your house to his house. And so you're on the way to his house, and lo and behold, somewhere in that process, you see the red and blue lights behind the car telling you to pull over. You're being stopped by the police. So fine, cool. You pull over. Of course, the officer comes and approaches. Do you have your license? Do you have your registration? You guys comply. Somewhere in there, though, a police officer sees a bag of marijuana in between the passenger seat and the console. And so this sets up a scenario. What's going to happen? Who should be arrested? Who should be held accountable? So before we really break this down, I have to tell you that there are actually two types of possession. So the first type of possession is what we normally would think of. To possess something means that you physically have it. You have it in your hand. You have it in your pocket. Maybe you have it stuffed in your pants. I don't know. But the bottom line is you physically have possession of whatever it is that we're talking about. So that's called actual possession because it means that you actually have possession of the thing, okay? So we all know about that, but there is a second type of possession in the law, and that is what we call constructive possession. Now, constructive possession is different in that it means that you don't physically have the thing. You don't have it in your pocket. You don't have it in your pants. You're not holding it in your hand, okay? And so how do you constructively possess something? So here's what Indiana courts have said, and pretty much courts all across the country have same or similar legal concepts that they go by when you're talking about constructive possession. So here in Indiana, constructive possession means that you have both the intent and the ability to exercise what we call dominion and control over the thing. So in other words, you intend to have some type of possession of it, and you have the ability to grab it, to retrieve it, etc. Okay, and if you have those things together, then you have constructive possession. So back to our example. So the marijuana is found in between the console and the seat on the passenger side. So a couple things can happen. Let's just say that the passenger, he pipes up and says, "You know what, Mr. Officer, I don't want my buddy to get in trouble. He didn't know that I had this down here. It's mine. I had it. I intended to smoke it when we got back to my place." Fine and dandy. If the officer accepts, that explanation, everything's good, and then at that point in time, it would appear that the passenger would be held accountable. The passenger would be arrested. And, the driver would be in the clear. Now, another thing that could happen is, let's just say that the passenger doesn't take ownership of it, doesn't, take responsibility for it and says, "You know what, I didn't know that was there. It's not my car." So then you have a situation to where you start to talk about constructive possession. So the question becomes, it's not on anybody's person. It's not, in anybody's pocket. Nobody's holding the bag. So then you talk about who had both the intent and the ability to exercise dominion and control. So it's not, always black and white when you're talking about constructive possession. So here's what the courts have said. When it's not clear cut, when you can't really tell on the face of things, there are several different indicators that the courts will look at. So here are some of them. Proximity to the people or the persons involved, okay? So in other words, let's just say that you're in the car and you're in the back seat and the stuff is down on the floorboard on the passenger side. Obviously, as to you, it's a lot more difficult to make the case that, he must have known what was on the floorboard on the passenger side, even though he's in the back seat, as opposed to the person that's in the front seat and the stuff is right by his foot. It's a lot closer to the person that's in the front seat. So, that's something that the courts will look at. Another thing will be incriminating statements made by the parties. So again, going back to the previous example where the guy pipes up and takes responsibility, that person has incriminated himself and said, hey, it's mine. I'm taking ownership of it. So they look at that. Also, they look at what the courts will call commingling of personal property. And what that simply means is, let's just change our scenario. Let's just say that the marijuana this time is found in a gym bag, and the gym bag happens to be open, and the officer can plainly see what it is based upon his training and experience. And so when the officer goes to retrieve it, lo and behold, when he pulls it out, the passenger's driver's license also falls out. And not only that, also in the bag is you have several letters that are addressed to the passenger, has the passenger's address, and it matches what's on the ID. So again, now you have on the passenger, you have proximity very close to it, and then you also have that person's personal property commingled, mixed in with the illegal substance. So you got that going for you. And so other thing we look at is ownership. We're talking, now let's just talk about the driver. It is the driver's car. So there are times to where the fact that it's your car also means that, it's likely that it's your car. You should also know what's in your car. And so that can be looked at as well. But the bottom line is, as to the original question, can me and my buddy be charged with the same thing? Can me and my buddy be arrested for the same thing? The answer is yes. And it depends on some of the factors that we talked about as to whether or not constructive possession can be found when it's not specifically on your person. So word to the wise, always try to know your surroundings. Always try to know the people that you're hanging out with. What are their habits? Do they carry guns? Do they carry illegal drugs? That type of thing. Because, if you get stopped and you're with them and you're in the same place, you're in the same car, or maybe this is a search of somebody's apartment, you can be subject to the same arrest and or charges that person is subject to based upon the actual facts. So listen, I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any questions about this video or any of my other videos, please reach out to me. Send me an email, call me, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. And until next time, if you have to be guilty of anything, be guilty of greatness. Take great care.